Welcome back. You're still watching Davos Insight. I'm Tian. Africa is a promising continent with the highest proportion of young people in the world. How to provide education and job opportunities for them, a big priority for leaders from the continent. The country of Ghana has been a pioneer of ideas and actions in this regard, even cooperating with global entrepreneurs like the Alibaba founder, Jack Ma. On the Swiss mountaintop, I had a discussion with Ghanaian President NanaAddoDankwaAkufo-Addo. He told me about how he has been improvising on inspirations coming from China. Take a listen. Mr. President, I didn't expect to see you here on the snowy Swiss mountaintop. Good to see you.
Very nice of you to have me on your program. I appreciate it very much.
Our honor, sir. Your country has been enjoying a big name in China because what you are trying to do to encourage entrepreneurship in Africa. I even from Jack Ma heard about your stories, wonderful cooperation project last year. Tell me more about that.
The biggest issue for our country, and indeed for the continent of Africa, is finding work for our young people. As you know, Africa is the youngest continent on the world in terms of its population. So the solution cannot just be public sector work. It has to be private sector development, and that means entrepreneurship. So we're putting a lot of emphasis in encouraging young people to become entrepreneurs so that they can work for themselves and create jobs for others. That's how Jack Ma came to Ghana. I met him in China when I was in Beijing for the FOCA, and we agreed that he would come to Ghana to help us develop ideas for entrepreneurship. And true enough, he lived up to his word. He came, and last, I think it was November, we had this Netpreneur competition.
That's right.
Ghana, which he put together. Very successful and very, very encouraging, especially people having access to a man like that who has done so much to promote all kinds of industries, new businesses in the world. That if he could do it, it's possible that other people can do it. And that's the basis.
But people also look at you, Mr. President, because you are not doing it just for your own country, within your own border. You are looking at Africa as a whole. Now, from a country that is not that geographically big, shall we say, in terms of size, that is big vision, shall I say.
Well, we've always been, if you like, to some extent blessed that Ghana has taken, I wouldn't like to say the leadership or the lead, but Ghana has always been in the forefront of the African narrative and of the African struggle. As you know, we were the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to free ourselves from colonial rule as far as back as 62, 63 years ago. And ever since then, many of the issues that have been developed on the continent, a lot of the ideas have their genesis in Ghana. So it's in some ways very natural for us to be having a Pan-African consciousness, a Pan-African exposure. And that is the basis of the work that I'm trying to do. And I think that also in this world, you have to be careful about just operating things for yourself and your family. There are lots of families out there, and as many families as you can reach out to and bond with, the better for you yourself personally.
But people, some are advocating unilateralism. Some are saying, we first, never mind what you guys do. Some are saying, you know, I don't care, we're the strongest.
That's their business. That's not our view. I think that people think that they're in a position which they don't need other people. Fair enough, we'll see. I find it difficult to believe that one can live in this world without needing other people. And I think that all of us, we need each other to make our habitation on this planet meaningful, comfortable, valuable for each one of us.
Mr. President, you also started something called the Year of Going Back Home, if I could get that name right. You try to encourage people with African roots to come back to the African continent and contribute, and even to be a tourist in a way. But as a result of that, you have hundreds of thousands of people come even during the Christmas time. I mean, for you, how to handle that? All of a sudden, so much increase of number of people coming back. On the other hand, how to make sure it's going to be sustainable, their interest to be back at home, their interest to cooperate with Ghana and the African continent as a whole?
Well, these are very big issues for our future, just as they are for our past. What we did was that last year, we used last year to celebrate a particular event. It was 400 years ago, in 1619, that the first 20 slaves were taken from West Africa, from Ghana in fact, and taken across to Virginia in the United States of America to become the first slaves. So we use this as a symbol of the slave trade, and also of our determination never again to be involved in such a barbaric transaction as a slave trade. So that was the first. Secondly, to use it as a vehicle, as a platform for reuniting the African family on both sides of the Atlantic, those who were there in the Americas and in the Caribbean, and those of us on the continent. And we're doing so to prepare for a new African initiative in this century. And that is really the meaning of the Year of Return. We're encouraging people to come back, regain their heritage, rebond and bond and establish the relationship with the African family. And it went very well.
But how to make it sustainable? I mean, you know, in a one way, this campaign is not only about history, it's also about the future,
Absolutely.
Right? How to make sure other continents are looking at Africa as it is, or looking at Ghana as it is, not necessarily through a third party, but see with their own eyes and work, cooperate with their own efforts.
So we called it, we've also now got a program which we call Beyond the Return, which is therefore to structure...
So you have it all planned out, Mr. President.
To structure a series of relations that would enable us. I mean, like in a lot of the development that is taking place in Ghana and in Africa, we're taking a big example from China. We know how important the Chinese, overseas Chinese, played in the modern development of China. And we're trying to learn from those kind of examples of what those outside can do to help bring up those on the continent and spark the development, and because that's our goal.
Yeah.
We want to be like China. That's our goal.
Really?
Really.
Why is that so?
Because of the development, the tremendous development that has taken place in China in the last 30 years. Everybody in the world has seen it. China 30 years ago is not what it is today. And it has been by virtue of vision, it has been by virtue of hard work, it has been by virtue of togetherness. And these are the same concepts that we want to employ in also lifting the African people up.
But also policies, very important, Mr. President. Sitting in your chair, policy probably is the most important component you can contribute to Ghana's development. How to make it sustainable has so much to do with policies. So how, in terms of investment, in terms of doing business and the business environment, and also in terms of easier access to the country, what is Ghana doing now, not only to attract people with your origin, but also from all over the world?
I think some things are quite basic that you have to do. First of all, if you want to attract people to come to your home, to live there or to contribute to the growth of the home, they have to see yourselves as somebody who believes in discipline, believes in hard work, and who's also prepared to be creative in the way in which you go about things. And that's what we have been trying to do in Ghana in the 3 years since I've been in office. First of all, to be disciplined in the way in which we manage our economy and in the way in which we manage our public finances. Our public finances were in a bad state when I came into office. They're in a much better state now. We've brought the deficit in our country down considerably. We've brought inflation under control. And these are the building blocks for the better economy that we're looking forward in the future. So we're putting our own house in order. We're also taking decisions that favor businesses, lowering corporate income tax, facilitating the establishing of businesses, employing much more electronic and digital arrangements in the way in which payments are made in our economy, in the way in which businesses are registered. All these are a pack and parcel of policies that we've worked out to be able to make Ghana an attractive destination. At the moment as we speak, we are the recipient of the largest amount of foreign direct investment in West Africa.
Congratulations.
And we want to continue with that exercise and build on it.
You know, it's apparently easier to establish a campaign. However, it is very hard to change from inside, in a way. Mr. President, how do you see the challenges facing every reformer in any country we're talking about, including your case in Ghana, be able to change?
I think you've identified, I think you yourself, your question and the way in which it's been put has identified the issue. That yes, you can do the reform, but to what extent does it actually change the culture and the habits of people? I think a great deal of it is always also a function of how successful the reforms are. If people can see that those reforms have an impact on their lives, which is positive, it becomes easier for them also to accept the reasoning and the thinking behind the reforms. And I think that these are examples in other parts of the world that we have seen. I keep coming back to the example of your own country. We have very good relations with China. That is something that has helped. Very, very good relations. Today, China is the biggest trading partner of Ghana. And we are very happy with the way in which we're cooperating in the development of the Ghanaian economy and the contribution that the Chinese enterprises are making in Ghanaian development.
One of the things about China is to lift the country out of poverty. That is amazing, as we all know, and you know how hard it is from a developing country's perspective. Mr. President, now China is trying to eliminate extreme poverty. Of course, it's the Chinese standard. But from an African country's perspective, particularly like Ghana, when your economy is on the rise, how do you see the importance of that, and what do you consider are the most important elements of doing it?
No, that one is absolutely critical. I believe that has to be the most important focus of government, what you can do to make sure that those at the very bottom of the system also have an opportunity to come up. And for us, the most important single issue is education. Yes. When I came into office, if people were able to use the state's public system to get education up to a certain level. That is junior high school. That is, I'm not quite sure it's equivalent within the Chinese system. You're talking about people at the age of 14, 15. And for a large number of people, their education stopped there because their parents did not have the money to be able to continue. So the state, since I came into office, has now taken on the burden so that people can have access to higher education without having to pay from them.
But that's a lot of physical pressure for the government.
It is. But it is one which we think is absolutely critical for our future. And that it is one that we have to shoulder and manage our own finances in such a way that we will make sure that it happens. Because of the critical importance for the future of Ghana to make sure that as many Ghanaians as possible. My vision is that no young person should be allowed to go to the age of 16 or 17 without having gone through formal education of their choice, whether technical vocational training or normal secondary school, but that every Ghanaian child, no matter where they're from, no matter the economic or geographical or religious background, should have the opportunity to go to school at least until the end of senior secondary school. Right. We want to create that critical mass of skilled, exposed, intelligent labor force that can then propel us into the future.
Moving on, Mr. President, to China and Africa, and also China and Ghana, we understand there are systems being established among the leaders of African countries and China. For example, you have the African Summit every 2 to 3 years. On the other hand, you also have the interactions and exchanges on different levels. Where do you see the relationship is going in an ever-changing world, Mr. President, of uncertainty, which is the theme for this year's Davos anyway? How do you think the sustainability of China's relationship with your country and also with the continent of Africa?
I think the sustainability is a function of reliability, especially when you're talking about relations between nations, continents, nations. If you are in partnership with somebody and you find that person a reliable partner, you will continue in the partnership. It is when that partner is not a reliable partner, when your issues come up, that they're not prepared to try and address your issues, they address only their issues, that's when you get difficulties in relations between states. So far, we have found China to be a very reliable partner, and that is why we're in a position to accentuate our economic relations with China. And my anticipation is that China will continue to be a reliable partner of Ghana and the continent, and if it is so, it makes it possible for us to envisage several years, decades ahead of closer and closer relationships between our two peoples, our two countries, as well as between the continent and the Chinese people.
Mr. President, before we go, final question for you. That is, how do you see the changes of geopolitics? It seems that it's making so much pressure on state leaders from different countries as to whether they have to choose camps, whether to stand in this line or in that line, and what should they subscribe to when it comes to international relations and systems. What do you say, sir?
Well, I'm not sure that there's been any qualitative change. I think those issues are issues that are extant, in existence in every generation. But we in Ghana have always insisted, right from the beginning, in 1957, when we became independent, up till today, that we will choose our friends. Nobody will choose our friends for us. And we will always insist on our right to be friendly with whoever we would like to be friendly with, and to give ourselves that independence. So our friendship with China, our friendship with America, our friendship with Europe, with Latin America, with Asia, all those are friendships that for us are not negotiable. We're not prepared to allow anybody to tell us, be friendly with X, but don't be friendly with Y. We're a sovereign nation. We guard jealously our independence and sovereignty, and we will be friendly with whoever we want to be friendly with. It's always, of course, the question is that they also want to be friendly.
It's always interaction, isn't it? Yeah, and I'm really enjoying, I hope you do the same, Mr. President, our interaction.
Thank you very much.
Sir.
Thank you.
It.